Thursday to attempt to move this bill, about $659 million, which covers the expenses we believe that are necessary between now and the end of September. And I think there's sufficient support in the House to move this bill. We got a little more work to do, though.
President Obama will not get everything he wants to deal with the southern border crisis as he sees fit. And with more than 57,000 illegals crossing the line since October, Republicans are determined to have the leader and his followers knuckle under to what they believe is the will of the American people, and to make the president understand what is honestly and factually happening in a part of the nation where invasion, at times, seems like an honest and correct characterization. Time to find out what is really happening at ground level. Welcome into MidPoint, the sheriff for Pinal County, Arizona, located in the central part of the state and the third most populous county in Arizona. The man charged with keeping the peace, Sheriff Paul Babeu, joins us today. Sheriff, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Sheriff, how frustrated, angry are you and the people that you work for on a day-to-day basis that this conversation continues to go on about doing something, yet nothing is being done? There
is no help and there is no law when it comes to immigration, and so it's very frustrating, not just to those of us who serve or are privileged to serve in law enforcement, but for all Americans, I believe, because there's no action. In fact, there's a deliberate effort afoot to undermine the rule of law, and by that I mean you and I, everybody listening, the law applies to us, yet when it comes to those from foreign countries who disrespect our process, who disrespect our laws, the law appears it doesn't apply to them at all because there are no consequences, and that's the tearing down of the very foundation of what America is built on, the rule of law.
Is there anything that you feel that you can do at this point, or are you really, in many ways, walking around with your hands shackled and the hands of your officers, those that serve underneath you, that you are really handcuffed and unable to do anything effective?
We're still bringing the fight to the Mexican drug cartels. In our sheriff's office, we have close to 700 full-time employees, and half of them work in the jail. So I only have half of those that are both civilians and then sworn deputies, and our SWAT team and all the other specialties. And we've been bringing the fight against the Sinaloa cartel, which believe they own the place. They believe not just in Mexico, they believe they own entire territories within our own country. And this is 70 miles deep into America. Just last month we announced the arrest of 8 cartel scouts. These aren't the ones carrying the drugs, but literally picture on top of mountains that you have a lookout. And these scouts live there for 10 days to 30 days at a time, resupplied with food and water, and they have high-powered binoculars, cell phones, encrypted digital radios, and solar panels on these mountaintops, even in extreme temperatures. And what they're doing is letting the cartels know that it's safe to travel or it's not safe because there's deputies or law enforcement in the area. They're paid $100 every time a drug load gets passed. Now, this is over a 50-mile swath of territory from just north of Tucson up towards Casa Grande and Pinal County. And this is unacceptable. And so I share this story with you because it almost sounds like I'm talking about a war zone, and additional proof is the largest drug bust in the history of our state. $2 to $3 billion occurred right here in my county. We had 123,000 illegals was the last figure that were apprehended right here in the Tucson sector. So this goes to prove that the border is not more secure than ever, yet the duties have fallen more to the local sheriff than they have to President Obama.
When you talk about war zone, though, is that not a fair characterization in the sense that, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, I'm going to let you tell us, but I'm going to tell you what we hear, that what we're talking about here with Sinaloa, with the drug cartels, this is not anything new. They are good at this. They have been doing this for years, perhaps decades, and these are people who would have no qualms whatsoever about shooting anybody who got in their way, about killing whomever stops them from making their money and getting their drugs through or their human cargo, correct?
That's absolutely true, and you don't have to look further than their own country. The violence in Mexico, 60,000 plus people have been killed, murdered in the violent drug wars with the cartels and fighting the government. And they've brought that here to America, And it's not just about marijuana. We're talking cocaine, methamphetamine, black tar heroin, and heroin. And this is not met with a heavy hand of enforcement by the federal government. Clearly, the figures I shared with you a moment ago underscore the fact that the border's not secure. The core responsibility of this president should be to protect our own people. We're doing it for every other country in the world when they call 911 and ask for our help. Yet I want to put America first for once and put soldiers, armed soldiers, on our own border to protect America and secure our own border.
So you are one of the law enforcement officials who would prefer to see the National Guard there. You would prefer to see people there who are armed and stopping, because quite frankly, there's a lot of people who, as soon as Governor Rick Perry said that he was going to put the National Guard on the border, said it's wrong, they're not law enforcement, they're not trained to do this, and it is a recipe for disaster. That's what they say.
Hooray for Rick Perry. And we have Christine Jones in Arizona who wants to do the same thing if she's elected as Arizona's next governor. Anybody who wants to do this, I support. And the reason being, I'm a 20-year veteran of the Army National Guard. I served a tour in Iraq as an Army officer. I commanded 700 soldiers down in Yuma for a year and a half to secure that portion of the border. There's 9 sectors of the Border Patrol from California through Texas. The Yuma sector, we reduced illegal immigration and drug smuggling by 97%. That's what a secure border looks like. Everybody's scratching their head, wondering how we can get this done. That's how you get it done. You put armed soldiers on the border, not 10 miles from the border, 20 miles from the border, on the border. A physical show of force that acts as a real deterrent. We're conditioned, even if you drive down the street right now and you see a marked patrol car or a sheriff's deputy, what happens? Your foot comes off the gas pedal. And I even do that when I'm in civilian clothes, because that's how we're conditioned, even good citizens. So people who are breaking the law, drug smugglers, illegals that are trying to get in with coyotes, the last person they want to see is an armed soldier. They disrespect our heroes in the Border Patrol. As much as I appreciate and value them, they have been neutered, our Border Patrol agents, because there is no consequences. There is no enforcement. That's why we have illegals caught every day in my county that have been deported 10 times, 12 times, 15 times, because there's no consequences. So what we have to do is literally have a show of force, and then we have to start enforcing the law. And that's what it's going to take to secure this border.
Couple of minutes I have left here. Some numbers. Now, this is the House bill. $659 million allocated through the end of the fiscal year ending September 30th of this year. $405 million from unobligated funding to disaster relief. $197 million from unused balances from the State Department Economic Support Fund. $35 million extra funding from Defense. $22 million extra funding from Justice. Almost $700 million. Two-part question, 2 minutes we have left here. Will this money do enough? Is this enough? And when you talk about the president being involved, do you blame the president, or is this simply the president, Republicans, Democrats, and everybody who has allowed it to get this far?
The president has failed in his responsibility, his constitutional oath, to protect our borders. And this is why it's going to take the 10th Amendment, states' rights, for governors to act independently. The president's not going to get this done, and this Republican and Democrat-controlled Congress is not going to get this done. The $700 million is a shakedown. It's being spent for other things. We might as well throw it out the window, because this is a one-time fix. Because 90,000 unaccompanied juveniles from Central America, if we allow this to stand and not return them to their countries of origin and do the humanitarian thing, is reunite them with their families there, all it does is send a message to the millions of yet illegals in Mexico and Central America that you make it to the border and you're home free. And that would be the tragedy of our lifetime.
But you blame the president, but do you also share any blame with Republicans and Democrats across the board, or simply
Absolutely.
Just at the president?
They're all equally to blame. And this is why guys like me and my deputies are caught in the middle doing the job these people refuse to do. We're the ones supposed to answer the 911 calls, not to protect the country, but we will do so because we swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and our nation.
30 seconds or so left. Militia members are now along the border in some places. As a law enforcement official, do you fear that having that many guns and militia members along the border may be a recipe for disaster?
I don't fear them, but I'm gravely concerned because you shouldn't have all these different groups there and that don't have legitimate law enforcement authority and taking actions or possibly, presumably, taking actions. That is a recipe for trouble. I don't know about disaster. We've had it happen in my county, and I've urged people against it. And if you do take matters into your own hand and you're not law enforcement, be prepared for the consequences. That's why this has to be a federal action or a law enforcement action.
Very well put. Sheriff Paul Babeu, thank you so much for joining us. If you don't mind, we're going to stay in touch with you as we go through this.
Absolutely.
And we will check in with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harsh words, but necessary words. Later on this hour, learning lessons from one of the more corrupt and badly run cities in America. Next up, we head for the arena in what promises to be an interesting discourse on the latest from the Middle East. It's all coming up right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.